I'd been invisible in this family for 29 years. The youngest of three, the one who never quite measured up, the daughter who chose art school over business school, the disappointment who worked as a freelance graphic designer instead of joining Williams and Associates, our family's mid-sized manufacturing firm. My sister Jennifer was the golden child. MBA from Wharton, VP of Operations at 26, Dad's right hand, Mom's pride and joy. My brother Marcus ran the sales division, drove a Tesla, lived in a penthouse downtown. They wore designer suits to family dinners. I wore thrift store cardigans and had paint under my fingernails. Sarah's doing her little art projects again, Jennifer would say at Thanksgiving, her voice dripping with condescension. How charming. Mom would smile tightly. Well, not everyone is cut out for real business. Dad barely looked at me anymore. I'd stopped being relevant to him the day I turned down his offer to work in the mailroom. Start at the bottom, work your way up, he'd said. I'd chosen a scholarship to an art institute instead. He'd called it throwing away your future. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been working 3 jobs through art school. Freelance design by day, coding websites at night, learning investment strategies in every spare moment. While they were building their careers inside Dad's company, I was building something else entirely. By 23, I'd saved $50,000. I started investing. Small positions at first, learning the markets, making mistakes, recovering. I discovered I had a talent for reading financial statements, for seeing value where others saw risk. My portfolio grew. By 25, I had $200,000. By 27, $1.2 million. And then I'd done something they never suspected. I'd started buying shares of Williams and Associates. The company had gone partially public 5 years ago when Dad needed capital for expansion. He'd retained 40% ownership, Jennifer had 12%, Marcus had 8%. The remaining 40% was split among various investors and employees. Dad thought he maintained control. He was wrong. I'd spent 2 years quietly acquiring shares through shell corporations and investment vehicles. Different names, different entities, all leading back to me. I'd bought out retiring employees, purchased from frustrated investors, accumulated position after position. I'd spent nearly $80 million total leveraging my returns, taking calculated risks. Now I own 78% of Williams and Associates. My father owned 40%. I own nearly double his stake. I controlled the company completely. And they had absolutely no idea. The Christmas board meeting was Jennifer's idea. A family business update, she'd called it, scheduling it for December 23rd, right before the holiday break. Just the core family, she'd specified. Decision makers only. I'd arrived in my usual jeans and sweater, carrying my laptop bag. Jennifer had looked me up and down. Sarah, what are you doing here? You said family meeting, I'd replied calmly. Family business meeting, Marcus corrected, adjusting his Rolex. You're not part of the business. I'm part of the family. Dad had sighed from the head of the conference table. Let her stay. She can take notes or something. So I'd sat in the corner, opened my laptop, and started typing while they discussed Q4 projections, expansion plans, and a major acquisition they were considering. A $50 million purchase of a competing manufacturer that would position Williams and Associates as the regional market leader. This is the big one, Jennifer had said, her eyes bright with ambition. This puts us on the map. National recognition. Maybe even international opportunities. The financing is tricky, Dad admitted. We'll need to leverage our credit lines, bring in additional investors. Marcus, you'll need to court the venture capital firms. Already on it, Marcus said confidently. I've got meetings scheduled with 3 firms next week. Jennifer had pulled up a presentation on the main screen. Growth projections. Market share estimates. Revenue forecasts. It was impressive work. She was good at her job, I'd never denied that. But she was also cruel in ways that Dad never noticed. Of course, this is confidential, Jennifer had said, glancing at me. Family only. She'd emphasized the word family in a way that clearly excluded me. I'd continued typing. Actually, Jennifer had said, her voice taking on that particular edge I knew so well. Sarah, maybe you should step out for this part. This is sensitive business information. I'd looked up. I'm family. You're not part of the business, she'd repeated. You've made that very clear over the years. You chose your little creative career over this company. You can't have it both ways. Marcus had nodded. She's right. This is for stakeholders only. Stakeholders, I'd repeated quietly. People with actual investment in the company's success, Jennifer had explained slowly as if I were a child. People who've dedicated their careers to building this business. Not people who paint. I do graphic design. Whatever. She'd waved her hand dismissively. The point is, you'll never be part of this company. You made your choice. This is for successful people. Dad had nodded his agreement. Jennifer's right, Sarah. This isn't personal. It's just business protocol. You understand. That's when my phone had buzzed. A message from Catherine Chin, my investment advisor at Hartwell Capital Management. The firm that managed my portfolio. The firm that held my controlling interest in Williams & Associates under various legal entities. The preview on my screen read, Ms. Williams, your $94 million controlling shares are ready for liquidation if you choose to proceed. Board documentation prepared. Awaiting your instruction. I'd stared at the message for a long moment. 29 years of dismissal. 29 years of being told I wasn't good enough, wasn't serious enough, wasn't part of the real family. 29 years of watching Jennifer receive praise for achievements I could have matched if anyone had believed in me. The acquisition they were planning would be transformative for the company. It was a smart move. Jennifer's analysis was solid. But they'd need every dollar of credit, every investor relationship, every bit of financial stability to pull it off. And I could end it with a single phone call. Sarah. Jennifer's voice cut through my thoughts. Did you hear me? We need the room. I'd looked up at her. Then at Marcus, smirking beside her. Then at Dad, who couldn't even meet my eyes. Actually, I'd said calmly, I think I'll stay. Jennifer's expression had hardened. This isn't optional. Get out. I'm a stakeholder, I'd said quietly. Marcus had laughed. What, you bought one share so you could attend meetings? That's pathetic even for you. Not one share, I'd replied. 78% of them. The room had gone silent. What? Jennifer's voice was sharp. I turned my laptop around, showing the screen. Catherine's message. Below it, the portfolio summary. Williams & Associates Holdings. 78.3% ownership across multiple acquisition vehicles. Total investment, $79.4 million. Current value, $94.2 million. Dad had stood up, grabbing the laptop, his face going pale as he scrolled through the documents. This can't be real. It's real, I'd said. I've been acquiring shares for 2 years. Shell Corporation's investment trusts, strategic purchases. All legal. All documented. I control this company, Dad. I have since October. You. Jennifer's voice had risen. You can't afford. This is impossible. Where would you even get this kind of money? I earned it, I'd said simply. While you were working your way up Dad's corporate ladder, I was building my own portfolio. Tech investments mostly. Some real estate. I did well. Marcus had been staring at his phone, his face growing red. The shareholder registry. There are listings here for HCM Holdings, Westridge Capital, Pinnacle Investments. All mine, I'd confirmed. Different entities, same owner. Me. This is fraud, Jennifer had snapped. You can't just secretly buy up a company. It's completely legal, I'd interrupted. I filed all the proper documentation. The SEC has every required disclosure. You just never bothered to check who was behind the acquisition entities. Dad had sunk back into his chair. 78%. Which means I control the board, I'd said. I control major decisions. Including this acquisition you're planning. The implications had started to sink in. I watched it happen in real time, Jennifer's face going from red to white, Marcus's hand trembling as he set down his phone, Dad's eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The acquisition. Dad had started. Requires board approval, I'd finished. Which requires my approval. Since I hold the controlling interest. Jennifer had recovered first, her voice taking on a pleading tone I'd never heard from her before. Sarah, this acquisition is crucial. It's a game changer for the company. You saw the projections. This could transform everything. I did see them, I'd agreed. They're impressive. You've done good work. Then you'll approve it? Marcus had asked hopefully. I'd smiled slightly. You just told me I'll never be part of this company. That this is for successful people only. That I don't belong here. That was a misunderstanding, Jennifer had started. Was it? I'd asked. Because you've been saying versions of that for my entire life. At every family dinner, every holiday, every gathering. I'm the failure. The disappointment. The one who chose wrong. We didn't mean. You meant every word, I'd said calmly. And that's fine. You're entitled to your opinions. But you're not entitled to my money. Dad's phone had started ringing. He'd glanced at the screen, his face going even paler. It's Richard from First National. Our primary bank. You should probably answer that, I'd suggested. He'd stepped into the hallway. Through the glass conference room walls, I'd watched him talk, watched his expression shift from confusion to shock to something like panic. He'd come back in, his hand shaking slightly. They're calling our credit line, he'd said hoarsely. Richard says there's been a change in the shareholder structure that affects our debt covenants. They need to reassess our lending terms. That would be my acquisition, I'd said. Changes in controlling interest trigger covenant reviews. Standard banking practice. Jennifer's phone had buzzed. Then Marcus's. Both of them had looked at their screens, then at each other. The VC firms, Marcus had said. They're all backing out. They're saying there's uncertainty about company leadership. Word travels fast in investment circles, I'd observed. My own phone had rung. Catherine. I'd answered on speaker. Ms. Williams, I'm getting calls from several parties interested in your Williams and Associates holdings. There are 3 firms wanting to discuss acquisition of your position. Shall I tell them you're open to offers? Not yet, I'd said. I'm still evaluating my options. Understood. Also, I have the paperwork ready if you want to call an emergency board meeting. As controlling shareholder, you have the right to remove and appoint board members at will. Thank you, Catherine. I'll let you know. I'd ended the call. 3 sets of eyes had been staring at me. You're going to destroy the company, Jennifer had whispered. Everything Dad built. Everything we've worked for. I'm not going to destroy anything, I'd said. I'm going to make a business decision. The same way you've been making business decisions. The same way you decided I wasn't worth including. Sarah, please, Dad had started. Let me ask you something, I'd interrupted. If I had walked in here 2 years ago and said I wanted to invest in the company, wanted to be part of the business, what would you have said? Silence. Would you have taken me seriously? Would you have accepted my money? Or would you have laughed and told me to stick to my art projects? More silence. That's what I thought, I'd said quietly. So I didn't ask. I just did it. I built my own success, made my own money, and bought my way in. Because that's the only language you understand. Power. Money. Control. Marcus had tried a different approach. Look, we were wrong. We should have respected your choices. But this acquisition, it's not just about us. It's about the 200 employees counting on this company. It's about the community. The legacy. Don't, I'd said sharply. Don't try to guilt me with the employees. Where was your concern for people when you mocked my career? When you told everyone at Thanksgiving that I was wasting my life? His mouth had closed. My phone had buzzed again. Another message from Catherine. Reuters is reporting unusual trading activity in Williams and Associates shares. Expect media inquiries. Dad had seen it. Media. A $94 million position in a mid-sized manufacturing firm? I'd said. That's newsworthy. Especially when the controlling shareholder is the owner's daughter who was supposedly estranged from the business. Jennifer had stood up abruptly. What do you want? Money? Is this about money? We can arrange a buyout. We can find investors to purchase your position at a premium. With what capital? I'd asked. Your credit lines are being reviewed. Your VC partners are backing out. Your acquisition is stalled. Where exactly are you going to find $100 million to buy me out? We'll find it, she'd insisted desperately. Maybe you will, I'd agreed. But it'll take time. Months probably. Meanwhile, your acquisition target will move on to other buyers. Your market opportunity will close. Your expansion plans will collapse. Dad had finally spoken, his voice rough. What do you want, Sarah? I'd looked at him for a long moment. My father who'd barely spoken to me in 5 years. Who'd written me off as a failure, a disappointment, a waste of potential. I want respect, I'd said simply. I want to be treated like a member of this family, not an embarrassment you tolerate at holidays. I want acknowledgement that I'm successful too, just in a different way than you planned. Done, Jennifer had said immediately. Absolutely. We respect you. We always have. Don't lie, I'd cut her off. Not now. You didn't respect me. You don't respect me. You respect my money. There's a difference. My phone had rung again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I'd answered. Ms. Williams? This is David Stanton from the Wall Street Journal. I'm writing a piece about your acquisition of Williams and Associates. Can you comment on your plans for the company? I'd put the phone on speaker. I'm still evaluating my options, Mr. Stanton. There's speculation you might liquidate your position or force a sale of the company. Can you address those rumors? No comment at this time. What about the relationship with your family? Sources say there's been tension between you and the existing management team. I'd looked directly at Jennifer. I'd say that's an accurate characterization. Are you planning to replace the current leadership? As controlling shareholder, I have many options available. I'll be making decisions that serve the best interests of the company and its shareholders. Including yourself. Including myself, I'd agreed and ended the call. Jennifer had looked like she might be sick. The Wall Street Journal? This is going to be everywhere. Everyone will know. That you treated your sister like garbage and it backfired spectacularly? I'd finished. Yes. They probably will. Dad's phone had rung again. Then Jennifer's. Then Marcus's. All of them had stared at their screens but none had answered. That'll be the board members, I'd said. The ones who aren't family. They're probably wondering what's happening to their investments. You're really going to burn it all down, Marcus had said bitterly. Just to prove a point. I'm not burning anything down, I'd corrected. I'm making you understand something you should have learned years ago. I'm not less than you. I never was. I just chose a different path. And it turns out my path was more successful than yours. Catherine had called again. I'd answered. Ms. Williams, I have the CEO of Hartwell Capital on the other line. He'd like to speak with you about your holdings. Also, I'm receiving inquiries from 3 major investment banks about potential leveraged buyout scenarios. And, this is significant. I just got a call from Malcolm Chin at Sterling Ventures. He represents a consortium interested in acquiring Williams and Associates entirely. They're offering $180 million. The room had gone completely silent. That's above market value, I'd observed. Significantly. They see the acquisition opportunity you were discussing. They want to complete that deal themselves and consolidate the market position. With their capital, they could execute immediately. What would that mean for existing management? Typically, complete restructure. New leadership team. Current executives would likely be offered severance packages. I'd looked at my family. Dad's face was ashen. Jennifer looked like she was going to cry. Marcus was staring at nothing, his jaw clenched. Thank you, Catherine. I'll consider it. They need an answer by end of day tomorrow. This is a time-sensitive opportunity. Understood. I'd ended the call and stood up. I'm going to go now. You all have a lot to think about. So do I. Sarah, wait, Dad had started. I'll let you know my decision, I'd said. About the acquisition. About the company. About everything. But I'm going to think about it on my own terms, not yours. This is our lives, Jennifer had said, her voice breaking. Our careers. Everything we've built. Yes, I'd agreed. It is. Just like my career was my life and you spent years telling me it didn't matter. That I didn't matter. That I'd never be successful, never be part of this family's real legacy. We were wrong, Dad had said quietly. Sarah, we were wrong. I'd paused at the door. Yes, you were. And now you're going to find out what being wrong costs. I'd walked out, leaving them in the conference room. By the time I'd reached my car, my phone was exploding with calls. Investment firms. Media outlets. Business reporters. The board members. Family friends. Everyone suddenly very interested in Sarah Williams, the overlooked daughter who turned out to own everything. I'd driven to my small apartment, Not penthouse, not mansion, just a modest one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, and sat on my couch. My laptop was open, showing real-time updates. Williams and Associates stock price was fluctuating wildly on the private markets. News articles were already being published. Secret shareholder revealed in family business drama. Estranged daughter controls manufacturing firm. Williams and Associates in turmoil as hidden majority owner emerges. My phone rang. Mom this time. Sarah? What's happening? Jennifer called me crying. She says you're going to sell the company? Your father's life work. I might, I'd said calmly. How could you? How could you do this to your family? How could I? I'd repeated. Mom, do you remember my art school graduation? You didn't come. You said it wasn't worth taking time off work. But you took a week off for Jennifer's MBA graduation. Do you remember my 30th birthday? I invited everyone for dinner. No one came. You all had a family business dinner that I wasn't invited to. On my birthday. That's different. It's not different. It's the same pattern over and over for my entire adult life. I wasn't worth your time unless I was doing what you wanted me to do. So I stopped asking for your time. I built my own life. And it turned out to be more successful than you ever imagined. So this is revenge. You're going to destroy everything your father built because we hurt your feelings. No, Mom. This isn't revenge. Revenge would be destroying it. I'm considering my options as a businesswoman with a $94 million investment. That's what successful people do, right? Make hard business decisions. She'd been silent. I'll let you know what I decide, I'd said and ended the call. The next 24 hours were chaos. The story had gone national. Forbes picked it up. Bloomberg covered it. My inbox was flooded with interview requests, investment proposals, and messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. The Sterling Ventures offer was real. $180 million for the entire company. They'd restructure, complete the acquisition that Jennifer had planned, and build the empire my family had dreamed of. Just without my family running it. I'd sat in my apartment looking at the offer, thinking about everything. 29 years of being dismissed. Years of watching my siblings receive praise I never got. Years of family dinners where my accomplishments were charming, while theirs were impressive. But I also thought about the 200 employees. The real people whose lives depended on the company. The legacy that, despite everything my father had built from nothing. The fact that Jennifer's acquisition plan really was smart and Marcus's sales strategy really was working, and the company really did have potential. And I thought about who I wanted to be. Did I want to be the person who burned it all down? Or did I want to be better than they'd been to me? On December 24th at 4:47 p.m., I'd called Catherine Chin. I'm not selling, I'd said. You're keeping your position? I'm keeping my position. And I'm approving Jennifer's acquisition. But I'm restructuring the board. I want a seat. Not as silent investor but as active board member. I want quarterly meetings where I'm treated as the controlling shareholder I am. And I want company bylaws updated to reflect reality. Consider it done. Anything else? Yes. I want a formal apology from the executive team. In writing. Delivered to every board member and every department head. Acknowledging that they failed to respect a major shareholder and outlining steps to improve company culture. That's unusual. So is buying 78% of your family's company without them noticing, I'd said. Draft the documents. I'd sent the message to Dad's phone. Acquisition approved. Board restructure to follow. Check your email for terms. He'd called immediately. Sarah? You're approving it? You're not selling. I'm not selling. But things are going to change, Dad. I'm not the invisible daughter anymore. I'm the majority shareholder. And you're all going to treat me accordingly. Yes. Absolutely. Thank you. Sarah, I don't know what to say. Start with the apology letter, I'd said. Make it good. You've got a lot to apologize for. The acquisition had gone through. Williams and Associates had completed the purchase of their competitor, expanded their market position and secured the financing they needed, because banks and investors were a lot more confident when they knew the controlling shareholder was a woman who'd turned $50,000 into $94 million. The business press had loved the story. The hidden genius of Sarah Williams. How one woman outsmarted her family's business empire. Underestimated daughter becomes controlling shareholder. At the next board meeting in January, I'd sat at the table. Not in the corner taking notes, but in a board seat with my nameplate and my voting authority displayed clearly on the agenda. Jennifer had been polite. Professionally polite. Marcus had been respectful. Dad had been different. Quieter. More thoughtful. Less dismissive. Before we begin, Dad had said, I want to formally acknowledge Sarah Williams as our controlling shareholder and welcome her to the board. We're grateful for her support of our expansion and look forward to her guidance going forward. It wasn't the emotional apology I might have wanted years ago. But it was acknowledgement. It was respect. And it was real. After the meeting, Dad had caught me in the hallway. Sarah? Can we talk? I'd stopped, waited. I owe you more than what I said in there, he'd said quietly. I owe you an actual apology. Not a corporate statement. A father's apology. Okay. I underestimated you. For years. I thought because you didn't choose my path you weren't successful. I was wrong. You're more successful than any of us. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. And you're a better person than I've been to you. I'd felt something loosen in my chest. Thank you. I'd like to try again, he'd said. If you'll let me. Not as chairman to shareholder. As father to daughter. I'd looked at him for a long moment. That's going to take time. I understand. But I'm willing to try. He'd nodded, his eyes bright. That's more than I deserve. I'd walked out of that building as a different person than I'd walked in. Not because I'd gotten revenge. Not because I'd destroyed anything. But because I'd proven, to them and to myself, that I was exactly as capable, as intelligent, and as successful as I'd always known I could be. They just needed $94 million worth of proof to see it.